The film begins 6 months after the events of the first Iron Man film. Ivan Vanko, a man, is introduced to us. Anton, Ivan's father, is dying slowly and telling Ivan his ultimate requests. Ivan believes he deserves the fame that Tony Stark has, but Anton encourages him to ignore that garbage. Anton can only offer Ivan his knowledge. Ivan takes a blueprint bearing his father's name as well as the name of Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark. Ivan then begins work on replicating the arc reactor and developing his own weaponized armor. Tony Stark has become a champion for world peace thanks to the Iron Man suit, and has practically solved the issue of world peace, or so he claims. 6 months after the events of the first film, Tony Stark has used his Iron Man armor to bring about a negotiated peace treaty between the world's major superpowers, and his enormous popularity with the general public is only increased when he fulfills his father's dream by reopening the Stark Expo in Queens, New York, to showcase all the latest inventions that will benefit the world. Tony realizes his aim by flying into the expo dressed as Iron Man and makes a grand debut to become the new symbol of international peace. Following his speech, Tony does a fast blood test. The palladium he uses to power his chest arc reactor is progressively harming his body. Tony and Happy are walking away from the celebration when they are accosted by a woman who presents Tony a subpoena summoning him to a Senate Armed Forces Committee hearing. Tony and Happy decide to go to Washington, D.C. in Tony's new Audi R8. The next morning, during the Senate hearing, Tony's customary style of humor takes front stage, entirely ignoring the fact that the Iron Man armor has been classed as a weapon by the government. Colonel Rhodes delivers the investigation into the events surrounding the construction of Iron Man, but the committee chairman, Senator Stern, takes his statements out of context. With Hammer Industries' Justin Hammer present, Tony gives a rebuttal demonstrating that he is Iron Man and will not part with his armor, comparing handing himself over to indentured servitude, and proceeds to hack the committee's computers to show that various attempts at copying Tony's suit, from Iran, North Korea, and even Hammer itself, are complete failures. North Korea's is top-heavy and simply collapses. Iran's crashes into the ground and explodes, and Hammer's suit rotates 180 degrees at the waist, severing its pilot's spine. Tony, as usual, refuses to turn over the Iron Man armor to the government and walks out of the hearing. Back at home, Tony is on Jarvis, analyzing the latest Iron Man suit prototypes and breakthroughs, when Pepper arrives and the two quarrel about the future of Stark Industries. Tony tells Pepper that he is making more money from the company's common stock than he did as CEO. He decides he's had enough of being the CEO and wants to concentrate exclusively on Iron Man's development. He chooses Pepper to be the new CEO, which astounds her. The following day, a gorgeous notary public enters to officially sign Tony's company over to Pepper. Tony is undergoing fighting training with Happy when he pulls an illegal move on him, mistaking it for MMA. Natalie Rushman is the notary's name, and he has Happy teach her boxing, and while reading up her bio, Natalie TKOs Happy with a takedown that reveals there's a lot more to her than meets the eye. Tony travels to Monaco for some much-needed relaxation. Tony is greeted by his favorite Vanity Fair reporter Christine Everhart at a reception before the Monaco 500, where Stark Industries is sponsoring a driver and has entered a Formula One racer, who wants Pepper on the cover of the next issue, which will introduce her as the new Stark Industries CEO. Justin Hammer is also in attendance. They also greet Tesla Motors CEO Elon Musk, who want to speak on a panel at the Stark Expo about his latest creation. Tony conducts another blood test and discovers that his palladium toxicity has worsened. Tony decides to drive the Stark Industries car instead of the driver that was pre-selected. Stark begins the race unaware that Ivan Vanko has joined one of the race's pit crews. Vanko is wearing a harness with two huge energy whips fueled by the arc reactor he developed after his father died. Vanko uses the whips to sever one automobile, causing a big pileup and ambushing Tony. Happy and Pepper rush to deliver the briefcase Happy is carrying to Tony while Vanko wreaks havoc on the track. Vanko uses his electric whips on Happy and Pepper's Rolls-Royce Phantom, and after several ramming attempts, Pepper finally manages to hand over the suitcase to Tony. Tony opens the case, which contains a portable replica of Iron Man's armor. Tony defeats Vanko after a fierce encounter by physically pulling out the arc reactor battery that powers his whips and shattering it after Jarvis analyzes it. Vanko is grabbed by the cops and taken into arrest, shrieking at Tony, "You lose." The entire audience is taken aback by what they've just witnessed. Justin Hammer, on the other hand, feels Vanko may be put to better use. Stark arranges a secret meeting with Vanko while he is in detention. Vanko asks Tony how it feels to be dead, and Tony replies that palladium in the chest is a very horrible way to die. Stark informs Vanko that this makes two of them. Later, Hammer frees Vanko. He slips Vanko a supper of chicken and mashed potatoes, along with a note to enjoy the potatoes. Vanko and another prisoner are given matching clothing and identification. Vanko promptly kills the prisoner and a guard on his way out the door, then detonates the explosive device hidden in the potatoes. As he flees, he is apprehended by two Hammer agents and taken away. Vanko understands Hammer requires his resources to outdo Tony, and Vanko obliges. Vanko is then hired by Hammer to construct armored suits based on current designs. Vanko informs Hammer that they are doing everything incorrectly. He also asks Hammer to get his pet cockatoo from his Russian house. On the plane return home, Tony and Pepper are watching the aftermath of the events that occurred, including a highly irate Senator Stern venting his rage at Tony on the O'Reilly factor. Stern claims that Tony Stark lied to the Senate Armed Forces Committee and that he is facing criminal perjury charges. Stark had assured the Senate that other countries, as well as Hammer Industries, were at least 20 years away from producing anything remotely resembling Iron Man, but Vanko astonished everyone by building a working replica of the arc reactor. Tony gives Pepper a gourmet supper and promises to tell her the truth, but they have an awkward moment since Pepper suspects something is wrong and Tony isn't telling her the complete truth. Back at home, Tony is using Jarvis to investigate Ivan Vanko. He discovers that Vanko's father, Anton Vanko, was a business associate of Howard Stark and a co-founder of Stark Industries. When Howard Stark discovered that Vanko was plotting to transfer weapons to the Soviet Empire, he arrested him for treason and deported him to Russia, where he was imprisoned. Since then, his son has been pursuing vengeance on the Stark Empire. Tony nearly falls when sitting in one of his hot rods in his basement and is discovered by Rhodes, who warns him that this isn't a good look for him. He demonstrates to Rhodey how the palladium is gradually poisoning him. Rhodes also informs him that he has been fighting the Pentagon by preventing them from entering his Malibu home and seizing his suits to be weaponized. Tony is preparing for what he feels would be his final birthday celebration. He asks Natalie what she would do if this was her final birthday celebration. Natalie says that she would do whatever she wanted with anybody she wanted. Tony is quite inebriated while donning the Iron Man costume and acting wildly with its weaponry during the party. Pepper and Rhodes are discussing how far he's gone off the deep end in the background. Rhodes informs Pepper that he is sick of dealing with the Pentagon and the Senate Armed Services Committee. Rhodes, having had enough of Tony's shenanigans, dons the silver Mark II costume. He then challenges Tony to a fight while the in-house DJ plays some nice background music. The battle concludes in a draw, and Rhodey takes off in the Mark II armor, delivering it to military officials at Edwards Air Force Base. Later, Justin Hammer is invited to examine the suit and offers them with advanced weapons to arm it. The next day, Tony is at Randy's Donuts in Los Angeles, wearing the Iron Man outfit and sitting atop the renowned gigantic plastered donut. Tony is disgraced and hungover when he is approached by S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury, who informs him that despite his difficulties with the government and his drunken Iron Man antics, which are the least of his concerns, Fury has a problem in the Southwest United States. Tony questions whether Fury and the Avengers Initiative are real, and Fury tells him that they are, and that he knew Howard Stark very well. In fact, Howard was one of the original members of S.H.I.E.L.D., the agency for which he works. They are joined by Agent Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff, a SHIELD agent stationed in Stark Industries to monitor Tony himself. A hungover Tony is taken aback by this discovery and dismisses Natalie/Natasha, but she then informs him that it's none of his concern and that he's under investigation by SHIELD, and she and Agent Coulson are there to ensure Tony follows orders and doesn't screw up. Tony's palladium poisoning is mentioned by both Fury and Natasha. Tony responds that he has examined and tested every known element and every permutation of them with no success. Natasha injects Tony with a serum that considerably reduces the symptoms of his palladium poisoning, giving him enough time to find an alternative element to keep him alive. Tony will be confined to his Malibu house in the meantime. Fury informs Tony more about Anton Vanko's history with Howard Stark and hands Tony a chest containing his father's old artifacts, which he hopes will be utilized to find a solution for his ailment. Tony resists more SHIELD intrusion, but Agent Coulson promises him that he will not leave until Tony obtains the answers he seeks about his condition. Stark discovers a note from his father while reviewing the film reels in the chest, which leads him to the original 1974 diorama of the Stark Expo. He takes the diorama from his old workplace, which is now inhabited by Pepper, and attempts to make amends with her. In truth, the diorama is a disguised schematic for the atomic structure of a new element that Howard couldn't create in his time, but Tony might be able to do with his superior knowledge and modern technology. Stark transforms his home workshop and hand-builds a small particle accelerator with the help of his computer system. Jarvis Stark creates a new triangular chest arc reactor that cures his poisoning and is far more powerful than Stark's previous iterations. Coulson tells Tony that he's free to depart and that SHIELD has reassigned him to another case in New Mexico just as Tony finishes the particle acceleration. Vanko has drastically altered the design of Hammer Industries suits, transforming them into automated drones. Hammer is dissatisfied with Vanko's upgrades and imprisons him in a small room with 2 guards while he transports the drones to the Stark Expo. Hammer shows off his new military drones, led by Rhodes in a heavily armed version of the captured Mark II armor. Unfortunately, it quickly becomes clear that Vanko has pre-programmed the drones, giving him complete control. He also controls Rhodes' new armor, and Stark arrives just as they launch their assault. Happy Hogan and Romanoff travel to Hammer's Queen's facility to stop Vanko as Stark confronts these remote-controlled opponents and tries to evade Rhodes. When they arrive, they fight their way past Hammer's security guards. Happy is thrilled to have taken one of them down, but is slightly alarmed to find that Romanoff has taken down at least a half-dozen in quick succession. Vanko has already left for the expo in a new armored gear, an improved version of the harness he used to attack Tony in Monaco. Back at the Stark Expo, the drones assault the standing room-only crowd just as Hammer finishes his presentation, and they run. Stark pursues and confronts the drones, as Agent Romanoff and Pepper arrest Justin Hammer for harboring the fugitive Vanko. Natasha is able to reclaim control of Rhodes' armor, allowing him and Stark to combat the remaining drones together. The 2 armored allies combine their abilities and effectively eliminate all of the drones. Vanko then appears in the area, sporting an armored outfit with upgraded plasma energy whips. Following a grueling battle, Stark has an idea for him and Rhodes to reprise a trick from their previous combat during Stark's birthday party, shooting their energy repulsors to clash and generate the same explosion. With Vanko stuck in the center, Vanko is defeated by the maneuver, but his armor and drones are found to be armed with self-destruct charges. Stark rushes to save Pepper as they detonate, saving her at the last second. She quits her CEO post after landing on a roof, and she finally offers Tony a kiss, to which they both see Rhodes seated a few meters away. Tony finally tells Pepper the truth about his heart, which profoundly upsets her. Stark tells Rhodes to go, but Rhodes claims he was the first one there, thus they should receive their own roof as Stark tries to defend himself. Fury informs Stark during a debriefing that while Stark is unsuitable for the Avengers Initiative, SHIELD wants Stark as a consultant. Stark accepts on the condition that Senator Stern personally present him and Colonel Rhodes with their bravery medals, but Senator Stern is not amused when he presents Tony with his medal. SHIELD agent Coulson is shown driving to a distant impact crater in the New Mexico desert in a post-credits sequence. Over the phone, he tells Fury that they've found it. Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, is in the crater.